What is a dirty little secret about an industry that you have worked in that people outside the industry really should know? They put little weights in lipsticks to make them feel more expensive so they can charge more. Same for Beats headphones. If it's the first time a professor is teaching a course, there is a good chance they are just one lecture ahead of the rest of the class. Nobody who actually sorts mail gives a shit about your package. The word fragile doesn't stop them from throwing it 20 feet into a metal container. It's really fun to pay $145 extra for hazmat shipping and see this box with explosive in big letters on the side show up at your front door with a big dent in the corner. When the health inspector shows up, a mad scramble happens in the back to clean the kitchen while they start the inspection in the dining bar area of the restaurant. Yup. One manager will hold the health inspector up in the front of house, while back of house is busy labeling and making sure minor violations they visibly see are dealt with. Microsoft Excel runs the country. So much so that Kelly Rowland once used it in a music video to try to text someone, and then got angry when the dude didn't text Excel back. Locksmith here. We can get into any locked door within 30 seconds. All the posturing and bringing out our impressive toolkit and hammer drill is just showmanship to prolong the call out 30 seconds flat. I'll never forget when my neighbor in London locked herself out. We waited for a locksmith to come over. He literally opened the car door, looked at the neighbor's front door from a distance for about 2 seconds, then pulled out a long bent rod, walked to the door, stuck it through the letterbox, maneuvered it around for a couple of seconds, and the door was open. He undid the bolt from the inside. 100 quid, 15 seconds of work. But you don't pay for the 15 seconds, you pay for the decade of practice required to do the job in 15 seconds. When an app pops up with a "do you like this app" thing, the yes button goes to the App Store for a review, the no button goes to an internal complaint process. This on average filters upset customers away from the App Store and artificially raises app score by a whole star on average. That is the only way most corporate service apps have 4 stars. Long time ago the company I worked for would only show this pop up if we detected things were going well in the app, no errors, etc. So even seeing the prompt in the first place is already biased towards people who are likely to rate positive. A very popular local bagel shop bakery I worked at advertised all of our baked goods were homemade, dozens of muffins, Danish, cinnamon rolls etc. And they were not. They all came from Cisco, frozen on sheets. Many customers would rave about the baked goods saying they were the best they've had. God bless them. If you're ever buying bulk gravels and crushed stone from a local pit quarry that has scales to weigh the amount of product you're getting F because you're paying for water. Most of these pits quarries spray the living F out of their stockpiles before during operation to make the material heavier in the truck. Never buy by the ton, always buy aggregate by the cubic yard. It's a measure of volume, not weight. Source: I own a rock crushing business, multiple quarries, and I charge by the cubic yard to not screw the public. There is a lot of money spent every year that decides where specific items are placed on grocery store shelves. If you're at a grocery store that's part of a chain, and you look at a shelf and there's an item that's approximately at our level, I guarantee you that the company that makes that item paid a lot of money to put them there. There's lots of weird psychological tricks that go on in terms of how stores are laid out. In the consulting world, nobody really knows what they're doing. Being a consultant is easy and cheap. Get 2 6-packs of beer, go out to the loading dock a few minutes before quitting time, and offer the guys a beer, and ask, if you were in charge, what would you change about this company? Take good notes, write it up in a 30-page report, and bill $5,000. You have to know your way around healthcare to get good healthcare. Edit: I had no idea this would get attention, but I'm so glad it did. Here's a summary of some tips. Thank you to many of the people in this thread for their own experiences and tips too. What you should know. 1. Your patient rights. You can ask for a referral to a specialist. You can ask for second opinions. You can ask to see what is in your chart. Know your rights too. If you have a family member in a hospital or long-term care home, please visit and be there as much as possible. When you are sick or old, you are just not able to summon the energy to be on top of med errors or even general care. The more eyes on the care and environment, the better for your family member. 3. Advocate for your family member. Do some research too. What is the illness? What are some options? And take these to the doctor and ask if they are appropriate, with the patient's consent obviously. For the patient. 4. Follow up. If the office doesn't call you, follow up. Keep following up with offices, pharmacies, specialists, etc. until you're satisfied. 5. If you are in the States, review your bill. Go over every item and see what can be negotiated and hound them until you feel it's fair. The squeaking wheel gets the grease. 6. Get a job in healthcare. Not a clinician? No problem. Environmental services and portering are excellent, well-paying entry-level jobs that can get you potentially into a union. You will learn hospital and healthcare really fast. 7. Before your family member goes home from hospital, make sure you see a discharge planner or a social worker to talk about discharge. Hospitals are full and they usually are pressed to send people home fast, with healthcare at home being an option. But it's not the only option. Talk to the discharge planner and push back if you need to. Look up questions to ask the discharge planner. 8. If you want the doctor to prescribe refer something and they choose not to, you are within your rights to say, may I have that option noted in my chart? I'd like to keep track of what I've asked you about. Innocent, right? Well, it's a good way to get the clinician to think about whether they want their rebuttal of your suggestion in the chart. 9. If it feels wrong, please see someone else. Don't just blindly trust health professionals. They're people too. They're not magic. Some are better than others. Read clinician reviews so you at least know what to expect. To all those folks who go into apps with chronically ill family or partners, you are guardian angels. Keep doing what you're doing. It is more supportive, and the optics for the clinicians matter, than you know. We touch your food with our hands. Weird. And yes, we wash them so often that they might fall off. That, or you get assholes that wear gloves for 12 hours and never change gloves or wash their hands. I wouldn't say it's mostly a secret, but agency staffing firms churn and burn college graduates, who are basically thrown in the wild. The recruiter you worked with may be gone in 6 months, and that's why a lot of ghosting happens. If your business uses an inventory company, your numbers will not be correct. When I worked retail, we used to hire temps from our GIS to help us. We had to stop because they were so incompetent that they actually made the job take longer than if we did it ourselves. I can believe it. The things we were taught were laughable if you weren't the one depending on an honest and accurate count. I can't tell you how many times I was yelled at for wanting to do the job properly. You know it's a setup for failure when you get paid for how fast you count, not for accuracy. Ex-farmer here. Specifically, I worked at a bio-certified one. Since there were no pesticides or herbicides used, every snail, every bug, every mouse had to be killed, manually, or by having a lot of their natural predators around, i.e. cats. The reason? Nobody buys tomatoes, or anything else, with snail bites on them. Wells Fargo, and other banks. WF is just the worst I've had experience with. Likes to come up with ways to illegally charge you fees. They then eventually get sued, pay a fine that is less than 1% of the profit they made on those fees, then finds a new slightly different way to F you some more. Rinse and repeat. Find a good credit union. Mega banks are all screwing you over. I work for a credit union, can confirm. Almost daily I have people say to me some variation of, wait, there's no fee for that. Nope. Credit unions are not for profit. We're not out to get you. Get away from the very much for profit big banks. People like to think that data analytics is some objective truth, when there is so much bias and room for subjectivity in data collection, analysis, interpretation, and communication. Oftentimes insights are cherry-picked datasets, deliberately presented, to make a specific point, rather than having the data craft the conclusion. The numbers don't lie, but the liars do the numbers. Bed bugs are actually incredibly common in hotels. It's just that nicer hotels generally have better means of treating them. Like an exclusive bedbug spa. We had this crazy machine that we used on one room at a time that would heat the entire room up to 140 F. Bedbugs die from overheating very easily. So yes, my hotel had an exclusive bedbug spa. The sauna of no return. Zoos and museums are universally held together with double-sided tape. The size or prestige of the organization doesn't matter either. Also, the dinosaur bones that you're oohing and ahhing over are probably plaster. The actual bones are stored safely in the basement. Aerospace has a phrase, get healthy in maintenance, underbid the contract to win to the work, then they overcharge on the maintenance activities. It's an investment strategy that pays well. Many aerospace sites have cash cows long-term maintenance contracts that keep the money coming into the site. BTW. This is one of the reasons DoD spends so much. I've worked as a DoD contractor, weapons testing, and you could write and sop on the wasteful and unscrupulous tactics. Edit. Great responses. I worked with artillery testing, tanks, in the AZ desert. Let's just say that we ate through tanks, trucks and ammo like popcorn. We bought a brand new $70 K-Ford Raptor and blew it up with artillery. None of your restaurant foodies. Made with love. Anger and anxiety is what made that muffin. Tina, don't you forget it. With a healthy dose of nicotine and probably coke. Airlines often make more money carrying cargo than passengers. Also, they have much stricter contracts about delivering cargo on time than passengers. If a plane is overweight, they will usually remove passengers before they remove cargo. Wash all of your new clothes. A very high percent has been worn and returned. Always wash new clothes. You never know who or what manhandled them. Always wash new clothes. They should be washed to remove industrial chemicals, dye residue, etc. from the manufacturing process. You don't want a lot of this sit on your skin. Hotels don't change the comforter on the beds in between guests unless there's a noticeable stain on it. If the pillows are placed on a chair instead of on the bed at checkout, housekeeping assumes they weren't used and puts them back on the bed without changing the pillowcases. All of this is due to cutting corners in housekeeping because the keepers are under strict timers for each room and they have an insane amount of rooms to do every day. Hampton advertises that they change the comforter between guests. That made me really uneasy when I first heard it because it was like, shouldn't that just be expected? See? Hotels are really nasty and I wish I never worked in them. What would make such a huge difference is hiring more housekeepers, extending the room cleaning time, and giving no more than 13 rooms per shift. How is one housekeeper supposed to clean 32 rooms in 8 hours without her deciding to cut corners so she doesn't get in trouble with the head? Impossible. I have had to assign 5 housekeepers rooms in a fully booked hotel of 550 rooms. Math ain't mathing, you know? I worked at a major jewelry company in the US. When we wanted to buy jewelry, we paid what it costs to make the product, material, labor, shipping, plus 10%. I paid around $115 for a pair of $950 diamond earrings. I worked wholesale diamond sales, so I had connections throughout the entirety of the industry. Made my wife's 15k plus engagement ring for about 3k. When you go somewhere that has novelty beer dispensers that you and a group can take to your table, just know they are incredibly difficult to clean thoroughly, and there's probably mold in there. I'm way late to this party, but I used to be a political campaign manager and political office staffer. The US government is run by an invisible network of interconnected staffers. The good elected officials are informed, but it's still the staffers who inform them. They write bills, they write bill summaries, they research the issues, they write the things the elected officials say. Without staffers, the vast majority of elected officials wouldn't have a reffing clue what's going on, and we have an absurd amount of influence over the information they base their platforms off of. On the campaign side, The reason there aren't viable third-party candidates in the US is that campaigns are highly complicated, absurdly expensive, and outrageously time-consuming. Successful candidates even for your state legislative races really can't do it all by themselves, which is why everyone hitches their wagon to a party. Only ultra-wealthy people can really afford to run their own successful campaigns, and even they usually need a party apparatus just to get the competent manpower required to run a successful campaign. Our first past the post means of voting virtual guarantees a two-party system, because elections are just extremely difficult for individuals or small party organizations to campaign in. More product hits the floor and then thrown back on the line than you know. Source: worked in a meat packing plant. I got fired from a local grocery store because I wouldn't use chicken that fell on the floor. I was a chicken fryer and the lady training me told me to just throw it the fryer, cause the oil will clean it. This lady pulled the fryer out to grab a piece that had fallen on the floor and told me to run it under the sink and put it in the fryer. I called the health department the day they fired me. Not all that much of a secret, but I used to work in a peanut butter factory. We produced about 25-30ish different store brands ranging from very cheap to stupidly expensive. We had a grand total of 3 recipes: chunky, not chunky, and no additives. Life coaches need life coaches the most. No one should really be hiring life coaches unless they love to give away money. There's no real licensing body, education, expectations, etc. It's literally just random people who like giving advice. Reddit gives crappy advice for free, might as well try that first. 75%. Based on personal experience, of the people working on volume build housing sites in the UK, think Persimmon, Blur etc., give 0 fs about the quality of their work as long as they get paid, and don't have to go back and put it right. This is the same in the US even in high quality home builders. Yeah, everyone in the Seattle area buying the overpriced Curtis Lang home? It's built like it with the people that build their homes. The roses you buy at Valentine's Day were harvested around Christmas. It's the worst time of the year to buy roses, and I don't mean because they're more expensive. They are also the worst quality because it's a longer holding time between harvest and use than any other time of the year. Never ever send flowers through an order processing service. Look at the location you're in or sending to, and talk to a florist in that area directly. Don't pick a picture off some external website. Ask the florist what they have, and can make that fit your budget. If you're worried, ask them to text you a pic of the completed design. Customer service reps are timed on calls, so when we rush you, it isn't to be rude. Also, all calls recorded. And reps are supposed to document the conversation. If an earlier conversation is not, you might have an advantage on certain disputes. Edit. Other said that you're being recorded also while on hold. This is true, but the representative is also being recorded while you're on hold. Some representatives would disconnect their headset instead of putting on hold. This way they are not recorded. Hold time is not added to the call time. And also against policy, so not supposed to happen. The ice cream machine is not broken. No one put it in its cleaning cycle when it needed to be, so they are locked out of it until they do the whole cleaning process. I've worked in the music industry for 10 years and have access to financials of nearly 15% of all artists' recorded music revenue. Nobody is making as much as you think. The superstar artists who look like millionaires are not, in fact, millionaires. I have a friend at the top of the charts right now. Heard their song on the radio twice today just driving to get groceries. Borrowed money from me just a few months ago. Edit. Jesus, you weirdos. I don't listen to modern music. Stop talking about fudge rounds. I have no idea what that is about. When you call a cable company to cancel, you speak with sales first. The deals they offer are not the best they can do. I once had a call with Sirius XM radio that they had 5 levels of better deals. I said no across the board, and they offered 6 months $0 and I still said no, because I knew the annual rate was going to charge, and I'd forget to actually cancel before they charged $100 plus. Many therapists are still practicing after probation or punishment for really egregious acts, and they don't have to disclose this to potential clients. If a therapist actually gets their license revoked, they often go into life coaching. My neighbor is a psychologist and she has a ton of therapist and psychologist friends. She invites us over for parties. They are collectively the most effed up group of people I've ever met. After the first time, my husband said he was exhausted because everyone there had issues they let fly after a few drinks. Whenever you see a high profile person publishing an opinion piece in a news outlet, 9 times out of 10, they didn't write that. The author came up with a 1-2 sentence concept of what they wanted to say. Their second in command engaged whoever the ghostwriter is. The ghost created the copy. The high profile person's number 2 reviewed for necessary changes. The high profile person themselves reviewed and signed off. And the number 2 engaged marketing people to place the piece in a news outlet. If you see an article from a CEO, a senior VP, a member of an elected body, anyone with status, they don't write their own stuff. This is not inherently bad. Organization leaders are busy, and they have the resources to have a team oversee their public-facing thoughts, so they don't have to worry about it. Still, the opinion pages of just about every news outlet in America, and elsewhere, are populated largely by ghostwriters. Source: I'm a ghost. The Defense Department literally just spends money to spend it, without any actual purpose, just so they can say it was spent, so they don't receive less next year. In my building with 10 men, the men's restroom was gutted and remodeled 3 times in 3 years. This is true in almost all areas of government, and in a lot of other business as well. So wasteful. Nurses and doctors have too many patients, and the nurses are on the front line to alert the doctor on important changes in patient condition. Ideally, a nurse should have no more than 4 patients who are stable, but very frequently nurses will have 6 to 8 patients, and in that mix there are very ill individuals. We urge you to read our nursing frequently, to get a true flavor of the atrocious dangers you are all in if you are a patient in the hospital. The medical establishment is gaslighting you with the nice websites, music in the lobby, smiling calm staff, but behind the curtain, we are all scrambling to make sure we don't make errors. But with all the stress, long shifts, people are most likely dying from nursing and doctor errors. Most are avoidable if we weren't stretched so thin. The industry will say there aren't enough nurses, and that is partly true, but we've been in many situations where there can be safer staffing numbers. Co-workers calling the hospital offering to work and they are declined. Unfortunately, the medical system is all too focused on financials to pay big CEO and upper management salaries, and they answer to their shareholders' interests and not you the patients. It is a dangerous time to be a patient. Again, I beg you all, en masse, educate yourselves by reading the nurses' comment on how scared they are. Anything marked vent is most likely a good read on a stressful and dangerous shift for a nurse. The vast majority of people working for pharmaceutical companies are hardworking, highly ethical, and proud of the work they do. We hate the executives as much as you do. IT certification companies that sell courses to get you into a well-paid IT job by learning while you still do your day job are selling you a hollow dream. I did sales. Not a single person or my team suckered into buying an expensive set of courses, got a job in IT, anywhere, ever. Well, almost. The company did get a single student into a job, but it was with us. In the end, after giving phone-ins marks the sales script I just used to say to them, now ask me how many people we've found jobs for. I got sacked when management listened to tapes of my phone calls. It was the only favor they ever did me. Most people just didn't finish the courses because they were too tired after work, but the company knew this and still sold them. Cruise ship. Crew members are underpaid and overworked, to the point where it'd be illegal in most rich countries. Explanation: I worked for a company that serviced cruise ships while they were on shore and in port. The staff and crew on the ships, who actually travel with the ship, are often from developing countries and are really underpaid for the amount of hours they put in. Here in Canada, and I'm sure in the US too, it'd likely be below minimum wage. How can the companies get away with this? Flags of convenience. Much like how cars have different license plates from different provinces states, ships must also be registered to a jurisdiction. But because there aren't enforced rules about the ship actually being from where they're registered, they tend to have home ports from countries where labor laws and regulations are more relaxed, and follow the rules from those places instead of their actual places of operation. The crew puts up with this because despite being underpaid by wealthy countries' standards, that translates to a lot of money in their home countries. So if they work for a few years on a cruise ship, they can gather enough money to put their kids through school or buy a new house back in their own country. So they tolerate it. This is why you have so many ships that have Panama City or Nassau painted on the rear as their home port, even if the company itself is based in Florida or something, and the ship itself has never been to its own port of registry.